So hey everyone, this is Tamsin Webster, and this was the version of Getting the Green Light that you heard at Startup Fest Montreal. So let's play a little game of Jeopardy, shall we? And you're like, dude, that's every day in startup land, and I know, but just play along, all right? So here is your answer, 42. And you might be thinking, yeah, I don't know what the right question is unless I have a little bit more information. And that's true. And that is, my friends, your first lesson in getting the green light for your business or your idea. People need information. They need more information, and not just any information. They need to know the reason why you are the right answer for them, whatever they may be looking for. And not just any reason and not just any case, we need to build their case for your idea. Now, here's why. Most startups struggle with how to get this green light. And in fact, CB Insight says that 42% of startups fail because there's no market need. Now, my experience is not necessarily that there's no market need, that I'm sure is often the case. But it's more often that for whatever reason, there's no perceived market need. So instead of getting the green light, people don't get any light at all. And that's where trouble starts. Now, it's a problem because it's not just the fact that you have the right answer, because I think you do, but it's the questions that the investors ask, the questions that the market asks that are so critical. And here's the reason why. Because as mathematician Blaise Pascal said, people are generally better persuaded by the reasons which they themselves have discovered than by those which have come into the mind of others. So that's why when it comes to getting the green light, we have to build their case for your idea. We have to build their connection between question and answer, which means we have to talk about what your idea actually is, which is an answer. An idea is your answer to a question you had once upon a time. Now, it may have been a question like, how can I make $1 bajillion, which is always nice, but more likely it was a question more like, what's a better way? If we're over here right now, what's a better way to get over there? And once you've figured out the better way, then you have the idea, you have the answer. So that combination of question and answer is critical and a thing that we often miss when we're talking about our ideas. So let's talk a little bit more about those questions, because investors, the market, they have a lot of questions. They've got questions like, how big is the market? And how will you make money? And even, do I like you? But there's one question that happens before any of those, spoken or not, and it's this one. What do you do? Now, even though this is one of the most common questions that startups and founders get, it's one of the most difficult to answer, or at least answer well. And you only have 90 seconds to answer it well. In fact, you have less than that. So I've talked with a lot of VCs, a lot of angel investors, a lot of accelerators, and they agree that within 90 seconds, they have to hear something about your idea that is both desired and different. They need to hear how it gives people something that they want via a means that they didn't expect. Without that, you're not going further. You're getting a red light. They're going to tune out. Even if it looks like they're still paying attention, trust me, they have tuned out. But if you do that, if you get that desired and different in that 90 seconds, then you get the green light to continue to make your case. Now, for an example, let's take an actual client and somebody I've worked with. So I live here in Boston, and there's a lot of biotech and life science pharma startups here. So this is one, and they're called Your Sure Inc. Now, what they normally say, if someone says, what do you do, is they say, we make patient-friendly diagnostics that measure and improve adherence to medications. We make patient-friendly diagnostics that measure and improve adherence to medications. I mean, that's not bad, right? I mean, it answers the question. It tells us what they do. But what if they'd said this instead? We help people stay on critical medications longer through simple tests that turn the effects they can't feel into results they can see. We help people stay on critical medications longer through simple tests that turn effects people can't feel into results they can see. You see how that answers the question too? But it does something else. It invites another question. How? How do you do that? And that inviting the next question to go from question to answer to question again is the key to helping us get this green light. So let's talk about why this desired different piece works, why what I call this irresistible equation works. Let's start with the desired piece. Well, that matters because it gives your answer context, quite simply. And also quite simply, people need context to care about your idea. I mean, think about it. I can't just make you want something. I can't say, here's my awesome invention, want it, and it doesn't work, right? But when you actually do want something, it's very, very different. Now, I pretty much always want cake, so I'm going to put that up there. And I want you to think about something that you really, really want. I mean, it can be cake, but it could be your next round of funding, and it could be lunch. It could be whatever it is that you're looking for and really, really want. So you have it in your head? Okay. Now, unwant it. Did that work? I'm guessing it didn't, because it usually doesn't. Because this is critical. People don't readily unwant something that they want, which is why when you give that first answer to what do you do, there has to be something that the person you're talking to actually wants, because then they're not going to unwant to hear the rest of the answer. Okay, so let's look at this first example and see what we could want here. Well, there's really two options. One is patient-friendly diagnostics. Okay, maybe. And then there's adherence to medications. All right, well, in both cases, we're dealing with a little bit of jargon, and we're also pretty much assuming that everybody knows what those things are. Think about it. If I don't already want something around diagnostics, or if I don't already care about adherence to medications, I might not get that green light that I'm looking for. So that light stays off. But now let's look at this other one and see what our options are here. Well, the first one is help people stay on critical medications longer. Okay, no jargon here. And it's something that people even beyond life science, pharma, biotech might be interested in. In other words, you're starting with a wider net of what somebody might want. Now, that answers, of course, they've got that question and sets up that question, how? Okay, how do you help people stay on critical medications longer? And so we have to give them an answer. But this is where we can go beyond and make it something different as well. So we give the simple answer that it's simple tests, but this is where the different piece comes in. We say that those simple tests turn effects that people can't feel into results they can see. Now, again, plain English, and it helps us do something really critical because it sets up something else. Now, I told you that you couldn't make people want something, but that's actually not quite true because there is one want that you can make people have, and that is the want to know more. It's called a curiosity gap, and it's what happens whenever there's a gap between something that somebody knows already and something that they want to know. So when you introduce a piece of information that's anchored in something that they know and want, help people stay on critical medications longer, and you introduce something that they want to know, well, how do you turn effects that people can't feel into results they can see? Now you've created a curiosity gap. You've created that want to go forward. When you do that, that want to go forward is a green light. It's the green light for making that next step in your case. And again, not just any case, it has to be their case. Here's why. See, you're the expert. You're the expert in your idea. You know it so well, in fact, that question that started it way back when has probably started to fade a little bit from view. And so what happens is that your attention, as it should be, is focused entirely on the idea itself right now. And in your surest case, how do we make this test? How do we make it better? How do we make it effective? How do we get money for it? And so what ends up happening is that you answer it from that side. And you end up saying, well, we're the better way. And that's kind of like our game of Jeopardy, where we just said the answer is 42. We can't know what the right question is. We can't know whether or not any of this makes sense unless we have more information. see, this is exactly what's happening with our example. They're saying we make patient-friendly diagnostics that measure and improve adherence to medications. They're answering it from their side. They're even starting with that patient-friendly diagnostics. They're starting with what they make rather than what people would care about. So what do we need to do? We need to back up to the other side, to the inexpert question audience side of this equation. And we need to make a connection between their question and your answer, your idea. And when we do that, when we make that connection, it closes the circuit. It turns on the green light. So how do we do that? Well, in order to do that, let's go back to our game of Jeopardy here. And what is it that we need to hear in order to make that right question and answer connection? Oh, we need the category, right? Because as soon as we know the category, then we can say, I know what the right question is. I know what the connection is. So if I were to say the category is retired baseball jersey numbers, then you would probably say, well, the correct question is, who is Jackie Robinson? If your question of the category was other names for games, the right question would be dominoes. Or what is dominoes? I would totally get that wrong, by the way. And third, let's say if the category was existential questions and you're a big, big fan of sci-fi writer Douglas Adams, then the correct question would be, what is the ultimate answer to the life, universe, and everything? The answer, of course, is 42. See, we need the category to connect the two. But when it comes to your idea, it's not the category that connects, it's the case. And once people see those two parts, that's when they know, I've got the right answer, and that's when they can speak up. When it comes to your idea and your case, it's that connection that allows people to say, yes, go further. It creates that action, whether mental or physical. That connection has a name. The Swedish call it the red thread, and it's named after how Theseus found his way through the Minotaur's labyrinth by unwinding a piece of a spool of red thread that he traced back and forth. And it refers to this thing that runs through something, this thing that connects, the line of argument, the thing that makes things make sense. So when I'm working with startups and founders on this, this is what we're doing. We're applying a process to find this red thread, to find this connection between their question and your answer in plain English in a way that anybody can understand. So let's talk about what that looks like. So with You're Sure, the way that it works is it would go like this. They would start with this irresistible equation we already talked about. We help people stay on critical medications longer through simple tests that turn effects people can't feel into results they can see. Now that sets up that next question of how. And then they would keep on by just now setting the next level of the case. And they would say something like, patients all over the world suffer from diseases like HIV or even just high cholesterol that they can't feel. Now, staying on these medications is critical for both patients and providers, not to mention pharma companies, but patients often don't feel the effects of the medication either. And so they forget to take them and they lose the protection that they provide. Now, traditional approaches to that medication adherence often rely on interviews with the patients where they report whether or not they've taken the drug. But what patients recall is often far different than what blood tests reveal. And the problem is that doctors often don't get the results of those tests until weeks later when the patient's back out of the office and off their medication again. But since seeing is believing, we decided to do something different. We developed a simple urine test that lets patients and their doctors see the medication in their system while they're still in the office. We make the invisible visible instantly. Plain English, 90 seconds, just like the investors want. And we've now made that connection in a way that makes sense to them, in a way that invites more questions along the way, that connects their question to your answer. So let's break down why this works. And we already talked about this piece, that it sets up and how and why it sets up that next question, how. So let's talk about what happens next. So at this point, they want to know how we help people see results they can't feel. The first thing we have to do is add a little bit more context, and context that brings us closer to the product that YourSure actually makes. So we talk about how patients all over the world suffer from these diseases, HIV and high cholesterol, that they can't feel. Now, HIV is the disease for which YourSure is developing this product, but high cholesterol allows us to connect it to the audience, because high cholesterol might be something they suffer with or something that someone they know suffers with. Now that sets up that question, why does that matter? Okay, well, it matters because we need people to stay on those medications. It's critical to patients, it's critical to providers, and yeah, you could even give a nod here to pharma companies, because that gives you a way to just plant the seeds for your total addressable market. Now, we keep going though, and rather than just say, all right, we need people to stay on medications, we give them a because patients don't feel the effects of the medication either. And once we've introduced that little extra question, it sets up our ability to say, right, and remember that thing you want, which is to keep people on those medications. Now we've got a problem, because when they forget to take them, they lose the protection from them. Now that allows us, now we've got a nice juicy question that hopefully the audience wants to know an answer to. And so mentally they're asking this question, well, how do you solve that? Now, instead of going right to the solution, we create a curiosity gap. We introduce the real problem that we're solving. We're introducing the fact that in these interviews with patients, that what they recall is often really different than what blood tests reveal. So that now prompts the question, okay, well, why does that matter? Well, it matters because now we're going to do something that's called raise the stakes. We're going to make it even worse by showing how that gap between recalling and revealing violates the thing that we know our audience wants, which is to help people stay on these medications. We raise the stakes by saying that doctors don't usually get those results until weeks later, when the patient is out of the office and off their medication again, which goes against what we know we've established is what people want. Remember, I'm not going to unwant something that they want. So that sets up a question, well, how do you solve that? And this is key. We answer with something they agree is true elsewhere. We use their reasoning to validate yours. Because remember Blaze? People trust their own reasoning more than yours. So we're going to find something that we think that they're going to agree is true elsewhere, and we're going to attach it here. Since seeing is believing, which most people agree is true, we decided to do something different. Now, that brings us to a question of, okay, well, what did you do? And that allows us to say, okay, here's what we're doing. We developed a simple urine test that lets patients and their doctors see the medication in their system while they're still in the office. So now we've connected what somebody wants, keep people on their medication, the problem of recall versus reveal, kind of this truth of the way to solve that recall reveal problem is to help people see what they're doing. And now we're saying, we've got urine tests that do that, and we're going to get the results instantly so people won't forget. They'll know exactly while they're still in the office when the doctor can do something about it. That is why we end with this last question or this last statement of we make the invisible visible instantly. We tie a bow on the whole thing. We give something that the audience will remember, and more importantly, that will trigger almost for sure that next question of how. And this is where you would pick up with your pitch as you normally go to market and answer all these questions about the market, the business model, the team, etc. Now, no doubt you have more questions, so that's why I spent some time in the expert tent, but it's also why I am offering this redthreadwebinar.com. Now, it's on July 26th of 2019, so if you miss it, I'm sorry, but if you go to redthreadwebinar.com, you can sign up for it, and even if you can't join it live, there will be a recording for it. But what we'll be doing there is going through how to find the red thread of your idea step by step. Because you don't just want a green light, you need it. And you need it because you already have the answer. You already have the right answer, but it's way bigger than 42. It's the answer to a question the world needs answered. So start with those questions. Build their case for your idea. Find the red thread, and you'll get the green light. So best of luck with that final round.